So again, good afternoon, everyone. So as you know, as Faraz told that we are going to talk about skill acquisition versus talent acquisition. So I'll be spending next 30 minutes talking, asking some of the different aspects related to that particular topic. But we are more than happy to get any question that you might have. We thought that we will take up Q&A at the end of the session, but then we decided that it becomes a monologue if we only keep talking and you guys don't ask any questions. So while we talk about the different topics, different aspects related to this topic, if you want to say something or you have any question, please raise your hand and I will time it accordingly and give you an opportunity to ask question from any of our eminent panel. Okay. So first of all, I must thank Zinnov for giving me an opportunity to moderate such good eminent set of speakers on this topic. In what I'm myself very excited to learn something new because not have been exposed to GICs for a long time and very excited to learn some of that. So most of the questions are my individual question because I wanted to learn. So I'm a little bit selfish in that way, so please bear with me. Okay. So in the last 1 year or so, at least I have noticed, I'm sure most of you have also noticed that suddenly there is a lot of news on like automation, job loss, layoffs, people losing job and whatnot. But when I talk to a lot of business leaders, my friends who are running organizations, their number one worry is people. In fact, for me also, while running Simplilearn, a good part of my time goes about thinking, how do I get that next right guy, right? And that really gives me a really, like, I'll say that's my number one worry. It's not about getting more business, but getting the right person for the right role. So while at one end we talk about like people losing job, at the other end, for most of the business leader, getting the right talent is their number one priority. So with that being the context, I would like to ask all our panelists to share like, where do they see their organization readiness in terms of what you are supposed to deliver today, as well as your readiness to deliver your future goals. We'll start with you. I think little bit, yeah.
So, it has never been the case that technologies get redundant so fast and skills that you learned yesterday is not relevant today. So we are constantly on a treadmill and this treadmill is going even faster. So everybody has to really start focusing on learning, unlearning, relearning. So that is going to be the way things are going to work. And people who have actually realized this, they're doing well. And people who feel that they're still in their comfort zone and they've not been able to realize the pace of change are really going to find it very tough going forward. So as an organization also, we are also trying to be in the cutting edge in terms of technology, in terms of making sure that we are leading from the front. So what we are currently doing is that we are planning for the future in terms of looking at all the skills for the future. And our central learning organization or the chief learning officer is very closely aligned to the CEO and the strategy team in order to ensure where the company is heading and how can the learning programs be relevant in order to ensure that we have the right kind of people with the right skill set and we are able to move to the market easily and capture market share faster. So some of the things that we do is that we are always one step ahead by trying to go to Silicon Valley and finding out what are the latest technologies, what is the next disruptor that is coming our way which will impact our business, how can we be close to the nimble startups and the various innovative companies that are out there. We try to build our own capabilities in terms of learning. We also try to hire some of the best people who can help us with learning and reskilling for the future. And in some cases, if we feel that the technology out there is much better, it will be difficult for us to build, we go and buy. We might take a stake in a startup, we might buy a company. So, everybody is getting very, very nimble out there. The competition is getting tougher. There's a lot of disruption. So that's going to be the way of life. And, we need to be prepared if we are not.
So, how many of you have grown on Tom and Jerry shows? How many of you have watched it? Okay.
I still watch.
You do, yeah, I know, even so do I. So the reason I brought it is because what fascinated me about Tom and Jerry is they always invented and found new ways to irritate each other. right? So whether it was Tom trying to figure out what to do to Jerry, or Jerry was trying to, I mean, he was always a step, Tom was always a step behind. So that's what I believe in fundamentally. You don't have to teach people each and every competency. You don't have to teach skills to them. They'll figure it out. You just need to have somebody to push and somebody to pull, right? So our strategy is basically getting all different kinds of people. But before I get into that, let me answer your question first, Krishna. To me, talent acquisition is acquiring the right behaviors and the aptitudes, whereas skill acquisition is just competencies, right? I mean, Java, and then there's React, and then there's Angular, and then you figure out, oh, everybody's using Angular, let's train everybody. Tomorrow it's a new technology. So we pretty much have moved out of that, and consciously, because, I think in one of the slides Krishna showed, workplaces were changing once, and what took 20 years to change, today I think it's 2 days. So you cannot keep up with that kind of an investment, and you have to make your employees take accountability. So coming back to the push and pull, the push is obviously the new generation, right? So while many of us oldies, 40 plus, are still in the workforce, I think we need somebody to constantly keep us on our toes. And the best people who can do that is all the interns you can go and hire from the schools, right? Because they have such a lot of passion to learn, and they are very, very exposed to what's happening in the world today versus people in the workforce. And I'm not generalizing out here, largely people in the workforce are so heads down into their deliveries and business outcomes of today. The external exposure is not as much. So that is a push factor. You get a grad. Today, the one who makes me most nervous is my son, right? He goes and learns something, and then he comes and asks me, I don't have answers. And the only response I give him is, you know what? You need to learn by yourself. Go and check out the net, right? So that's the push I think the next generation is bringing. Do we go outside? No. We don't do a lot of talent acquisition from outside, unless again it's hiring the right behaviors and the right aptitude, right? So people who have already got a growth mindset, people who do not believe that this is my aptitude, this is my competency, I can do only as much. We want people who want to experiment, push, stretch. So that's the kind of talent we acquire, and that's typically at the leadership level. This is more in terms of strategy. Given now, I think, or later, I don't see any short-term, long-term strategy. Short-term is typically, I have to get a project out of the door in September, and I need people to deliver that because I've committed to the clients. I will probably look at some short-time staffing, and I would still go out and look at some contractor workforce if available. But otherwise, I believe there is no way to go and say my short-term strategy is get this set of skills, and my long-term I'll think about building for the future. Whether it's AI, whether it's VR, whether it's AR, I think the need is now, because the learning curve for each of these is going to be pretty high. So if you don't introduce that into your workforce today, they will not be ready to deliver the innovations you want tomorrow. So that's pretty much it.
Constant learning is a definite given in this particular world, but we need to understand also the context of the industry. At least the communication industry I'm working with, 90% of millennials, they in fact want to learn. They want information anytime, anywhere kind of a situation. Also, if you look at the kind of products we have, diversified products, getting into cloud, AI, and the way the communication market is moving. We are talking about digital technologies, cloud, AI, those kind of stuff. Digital, people, customers, which is connected, social, want self-service. And also you're talking about digital economy, IoT, MFS and those kind of stuff. The reality is it's also time-bound. So although you may like to get only talent, but the reality is you also need to hire for skills. Talent always a long run, time is the essence in the industry. You cannot miss on the time part of it and the essence of it. But yeah, when we do is, so we acquire skill or talent depending on the business needs and also the criticality and urgency or the timeline that is there. But yes, what we do is using BI and other things, look at learnability. a willingness to learn kind of a scenario from these people. Because, and learnability is not also about providing tools, it's also about mindset. In fact, there is a very nice quote by Brian Herbert, which says capacity to learn is a gift, the ability to learn is a skill, and willingness to learn is a choice. So we are living at or looking at people who are willing to learn. And for that, we are applying two concepts in our organization at least. One is growth mindset. It's a research-driven, kind of a methodology or a concept by towards that. And second is about a positive leadership, where instead of leaders holding space, instead of taking space, they hold space for grooming the employees to take those kind of a position. And that is what will, over a period of time, build a learning culture for us. And that's what we are doing it.
Thanks. I'm not going to repeat, I think what's been said. I agree with whatever Kannan, Snigdha and Rajat said. I'll give you a little bit of an example from our firm where we had to make the shift of moving from a product-based firm to more of a solutions-based, including services along. So the need of the hour was, keeping the domain knowledge within our employees that we had, and then basically upskilling them with the skills that you need from all the technological innovation that was happening around us. So obviously, I think hiring for skills from the outside is definitely a tactical way to address the business need. But the longer term stuff is definitely the hiring for behavioral talent, willingness to learn. I think there's a phrase that's used in our company. Every moment is a learning moment. So basically just inculcating that culture in the organization is something that we constantly try to put that into people, and then look for that when we are hiring talent from the outside as well. So I'll probably stop there and then maybe let Krishna get back into the discussion.
Yeah. So I think most of you tried answering my second question also, but I'll again repeat that. So my first question was asking all of you on whether your organization is ready for what you have to deliver today as well as tomorrow. And what I hear is that all of you have a very good plan. You are already hiring the right talent and then trying to train them on the skills that are required to be successful, right? Now my next question, and Rajat, you tried answering them, is that how do you build a learning culture? So the reason why I had thought about this question is that, see, if you look at skill alone, see, talent, the behavioral things do take some time to change, right? It's not so easy for someone who is to change their behavior or change their attitude, right? That takes a lot of time, and it's like some of the skills are like God gifted, some of the skills you can acquire and so on. Skill is relatively easy to teach, but the world has changed in last few years, right? The shelf life of a skill has become really very short, right? So how are you building that culture wherein everyone is spending some time thinking about, do I have the skill to be successful for my next project? So if you have to become very tactical also, how are you dealing that? Because my observation has been running this online training company for last 6 years is that there are only two kinds of people: the one who wants to learn and the one who doesn't want to learn, right? So, and the one who wants to learn is only 5% of the total population, right? And I'm happy with serving those 5% of the population because they work in so many different companies. But if in your organization only 5% people want to learn, then you have a real big problem. So how are you going about solving it, right? I'm sure you must have found different innovative ways of solving it. So it'll be good to hear some of those stories on it happened in a team, it happened in a particular physical location, it happened on a global scale. Love to hear your stories.
Want me to start?
I think if anyone has a good story to tell.
So, what our training team, keeps telling us is that with so much of change, even they have to keep relearning, unlearning and learning, and to make everyone come into the training rooms and get trained is not an easy task, I can tell you. So some of the things that they look at when you look at a bunch of trainees is that they have three categories. One is the people who are known as hostages. They have been pushed into training by their managers. So they come into a room and they spend 8 hours there and they are like hostages. So they have no intention of learning. They are in their comfort zone in their work. They don't have any thought of the future. And to have such trainees is really difficult because you don't know whether their mind is there and they want to be trained and they have that fire in the belly. So that is a very bad group of people to have. So another group of trainees would be vacationers. So they are there just to take a vacation away from the shop floor or operations area and then take a vacation for a few days. And the third category is the explorers. And this is the real group which is very curious and wants to learn something. They are the energy in the room, and that is the group that our trainers really want. So if an organization has more of those explorers and you convert the vacationers and hostages into explorers, then you can have better bang for the buck. So people are in their comfort zone. Some people don't know their skills or their capabilities. So it's up to the leadership to ensure that people realize their worth, and you can either give them a great opportunity and tell them what lies ahead if they learn artificial intelligence or big data or cloud computing, or you can also tell them that they don't have a job if they don't learn. So through fear or through persuasion and the desire to learn, people will get converted. So that is what our learning organization is always trying to see. How can we get more people skilled? How can we get them willingly coming into the room and learning? Also, when you see people, they have different types of learning capabilities. IQ is different, and people, some of them are kinesthetic learners, some of them are visual learners, some of them are auditory learners. The attention span nowadays is so less that after every few minutes people want to look at their cell phones. So to get people to learn through either bite-sized small modules, small knowledge pieces, or to put them into a room and make them train for 8 hours. So it's a big challenge, and the learning teams are doing an amazing job. And I think the secret of a successful organization is how do you crack all these codes.
I have a slightly different take on that, to be very honest. If you look at Gen Y, or our experience has been, they are pretty open to learning, and they are actually actively looking at things. It's the only thing is the way is changing. Now there are knowledge seekers and knowledge givers. If you are able to provide a platform to match these knowledge seekers and knowledge givers in the organization, the learning happens quite a bit. Again, we go back to our concept of growth mindset, which also assumes that everybody wants to learn. It's a motivation that you need to provide in terms of learning. And what we have been doing is trying to provide some of these platforms. For example, we have a program called Grow Skill, which is people coming from Gen Y ready to impart soft skills to the other. We have a program called Elite Expert. Again, technical experts from within Gen Y who volunteer to actually impart knowledge to some other people. So these are the kind of things that we are trying to see. Plus, we have also done some things at an organization level which facilitate some of this. For example, we moved away from a more title-based hierarchical kind of a structure to a role-based kind of a structure. Now, what happens in a role-based kind of a structure? People are not too worried about titles because titles are already gone. So they look at a role kind of a thing, and they are more open to moving laterally to different positions and test out different themes and test out different jobs. And the internal job market is created from that perspective. And then we have a tool called a competency map, which basically lists down all the competencies that you require for a target job. So a person is expected to go to that particular map, look at what are the competencies the person he or she needs to develop, and actually work on them. And yes, organization can help you through that. You can actually have peers helping you through that, and there are various ways of helping. So we believe as long as we are able to establish a growth mindset and a learning culture, people do learn and are willing to learn, and they realize that if they don't learn, the world is changing too fast.
Now, I think the other thing to add is basically partnering with our learning and development organization and getting them to the business table in terms of when we are discussing what sort of disruption that's happening in certain areas of our business, maybe some modernization efforts or something happening, and then try to assess where we are, what the gaps are between where we are today versus where we want to go, and then take stock of where we are. But certainly, I think some of the ways that we discussed, I think some of the traditional ways of basically getting that help from the outside and training our people is certainly there. But I think new ways of finding these kinds of internal experts who can potentially who have that kind of passion to impart that knowledge into whoever is willing to learn, I think is definitely the way to go. So that's something that we're definitely constantly looking at doing within our firm.
So yeah, ours is definitely a lot of it that's already been discussed. We have a career navigation framework which is pretty similar to the competency role-based map that you talked about. But what we have tried to do is get the employees or the associates to take the complete accountability for their learning and growth and development. So the way we have structured our career navigation framework is the roles talk about, and we've moved away from titles, we called it valued professional, emerging leader, expert leaders, and thought leaders. We talk again about behaviors and link them with outcomes. So when you talk about thought leaders, how many patents, how many papers, so that's the kind of linkage that we've drawn at every level, right? And the second thing that we try to do is make them reflect, right? So it's part of the career development discussions or, kind of making those more effective. So if somebody goes and looks at a role and says, okay, this is what is expected out of me, and trust me, the way we have designed it is it crosses role boundaries, and that's been extremely intentional to make the person realize that to succeed, I need to do much more than I'm not a programmer, I'm a solution provider, so I have to think of the service design, I have to think about the user experience, I have to think about the DevOps. So that's kind of designed into the career navigation framework. Now, once somebody identifies the competencies, the person can reach out and ask for a coach, or can go and sign up for a Coursera course or a Udemy course, or as you said, it could be just one of them standing up and saying, hey, I have a little bit more knowledge and I'm ready to impart the knowledge. So that's one of the things that we have done in a very structured format. The second thing that we have done is, being in the product space and the SaaS space for very long, we really believe that people need to have a product thinking, need to understand that everything is being done for the user. So it's important to understand personas, it's important to understand what is the value that you're creating for each of the users. So some of the fundamental instruments we've created out there is very high, I would say really expensive training programs, and some of it is designed top down, because unless you have the leaders sensitized to what is required in terms of behaviors and competencies, it's very difficult for them to encourage and coach their respective people. Interestingly, each of these programs are followed very soon by a hackathon or a datathon or a productathon. So you learn something, it may or may not be relevant to your current job, but then you have a platform where you can go and demonstrate. Interestingly, even though we never thought, when you talk about blockchain, the first thing that comes to your mind is fintech. And it was so interesting that one of these guys actually came up with a use case. He did a prototype and he showed us the application of blockchain to HCM. And that was something nowhere in the global locations was it ever thought of. So that's the power. And then what we do is, we ensure there's tremendous visibility around some of these early successes. So whether their success stories being published, or these people getting to present their thoughts and ideas in front of the CEO and his leadership level, we create a lot of buzz around these people. And that encourages the others to want to do it, right? Because everybody wants that visibility, everybody wants that recognition. Coming back to our performance structure, our performance framework is also heavily pay for performance, but here many of our performance goals are learning goals, right? So they're tied back to the career navigation frameworks. So that's pretty much the ecosystem we've created, to kind of ensure that people experimenting, collaborating with cross-functional teams, so they learn out there, they learn different perspectives. So there's a lot of subtle, some subtle initiatives and some extremely structured programs. And one of the things, I couldn't come here yesterday because we started this Hello UX event in Hyderabad. Hyderabad, the design thinking or the product, maturity is far lesser compared to Bangalore or Pune or NCR. So we said rather than, kind of poaching from each other, let's try to invest in the ecosystem and create the learning culture. So we bring in a lot of speakers internationally or nationally from the IIT profs. We've spent decades in design thinking and research. And we not only open it up for our associates, we open it up for all the other firms out there. And the whole purpose is let people celebrate learning together. And so, it's more of whoever you're talking to, your social circle, they're also talking about learning. So that's the kind of, viral behaviors that we've tried to introduce.
Good. So what I'm hearing is that all of you are trying to have a career plan in place and that encourages people to go and learn. And occasionally also trying to say that if you don't learn, you become irrelevant. So I think that's a very good plan in place. So I wanted to open up for Q&A, but now I see that I have less time. So there's another aspect that I want panel to talk about it, and before I open for any kind of question that audience might have, and that is on trainability. So we see most of the companies, they have so much of skilling plan in place, training plan in place. Most of them are hiring and firing at the same time. So that really is a big question, that if you have a very good training plan in place and you also have need for hiring, so why not train the existing people and then getting somebody from outside? And I'm sure it's not a very pleasant thing to do. Nobody wants to ask somebody that, okay, you are not required. So I want to understand, what is your current plan or a strategy or an approach? When do you decide to give up on a candidate, saying that, okay, sorry, we can't deploy him on any of our roles, he's not trainable, and we should just ask him to move on and get somebody else? I know it's a little sensitive, so you can give your personal opinion, not necessarily your organization opinion.
See, we believe that everybody can be trainable, provided they get the right guidance. And everyone who comes into the organization always wants to be successful. No one wants to fail. So it depends on the leadership as to how you nurture them and find them the right role that they can do. They all have basic qualifications, and along the way some people might have not progressed the way you want, but you always try to back people up and try to give them the right roles and you set them up for success. And when you look at talent inside versus outside, I always think that talent inside is much better because they're already glued into the culture of the organization. They are familiar with what is going on. Probably they are in their comfort zone. You just need to shake them up a little bit and give them the right necessary tools, mentoring and guidance. So you will be really surprised when you see that within the organization there is so much of talent and skills available that you don't need to go outside. Unfortunately, when you run a large organization, you really do not know the kind of skills, multiple skills that each person has. If you can list them down, you will find most of the skills that within the organization. Currently, you might have a person working on some technology, but the person is qualified and is also done in his previous job, has done something else. So they could be the right candidate instead of going outside and hiring someone at a premium for something that is available. You go outside to hire somebody at a premium only if they come with some skills which are complementary, which are not available, and there is a time constraint and you need to do this project immediately, you don't have the required people, the training will take a long time, then you go and hire people from outside. Or else you bet on your own people inside.
We have since very limited time, so really request that you can maybe keep the answers short for this question. I want to give some time to the audience as well.
Quickly, internally, yes, you can train, and we have a tool called KTV, which basically looks at the knowledge levels in the organization, and manager evaluates the level. So we have KL1, KL2, KL3, KL4. So what we do is internally, anytime we need to staff a project, we typically look at a mix of all these knowledge levels. Certain KL level 4, 3, 2, 1, and then see once we have the experts, how do we bring the other people into that kind of a thing? And that also helps because you're then staffing a particular project which a required level of knowledge, but at the same time you have within that knowledge, you have within that project you have created an infrastructure where people can pick up from more knowledgeable folks. So that's one of the something that we are doing. And we are also trying to influence even at the university level. We have something like a cloud-based innovation lab where we are actually engaging students into the live projects in the organization. Or we also are looking at faculty enrichment program, which exposes the faculty itself, what is going on in the industry. So the projects given to the students are much more relevant.
Good.
I think I agree with Kannan when he said everybody is trainable, right? I mean, I think, back to your question about when do we look for external help for certain kinds of projects or certain kinds of needs, we encourage, everybody to look at different options. I think people have different interests. Sometimes the interests change. I mean, if they've been hired for a testing kind of position, want to move into development, want to move into a business analyst kind of role, we definitely encourage mobility. So in fact, we even have incentives for our leaders to look at what sort of mobility is happening within their organization for your top performers, not necessarily your bottom performers that you're looking to move to other areas. But primarily, we try and find out internally people taking on different roles. I mean, I think they become that much more richer in their experience. But only when we have exhausted pretty much all the avenues, I think we would probably go outside, especially for some very niche skills that can be beneficial to the organization, and then from a time to market perspective as well.
So two things that we have done is, one, we have taken complete ownership of the learning and development part of our organization, right? So while HR does have an L&D organization, the more generic skills is what we have them take accountability for, which could be situational leadership, communication. But everything else that's required to run a product firm is something that we run, within the business itself. Second thing, I made a reference to this point even in the first question. I don't believe there is a difference between a long-term strategic need and a now need, right? So what we had done is, before ADP jumped into the data science and the data cloud, in terms of productizing it, we actually identified top performers, and the way we rewarded and recognized them is made them go through formal, structured programs outside. So we build the capability before we need that there is going to be a need for the capability. And that, in fact, I mean, the chief data scientist of ADP is actually sitting in this room. So the way that's worked out for us is, when you've invested early on and with some of your best people, it is actually an opportunity for the India arm to kind of level the ground, right? I mean, you can stake a claim to the new technology first. And that has really worked out for us. So our high performers, solid performers, they're the ones we continue to invest in the latest of technologies. So that's pretty much what we have done. And the QA that you talked about, again, that's a lot of advanced planning. We said before, while we stopped hiring any manual QA in the organization, for the ones who have been there and are performing, we actually created a product specialist track, because domain expertise is so important for us. And they knew what competencies, what skills they have to acquire to be relevant to the firm. So this goes back, I think, the common thread that we're hearing is everybody is trainable. You'll probably have to either incentivize or push some candid, tough conversations, and then some counseling and guidance. But I don't think there's anybody who's not trainable.
So I think really good to know this positive note that everybody is trainable. I also believe so, and that's my business. So with that, I'll open the floor for any kind of question, any question that you might have with the entire panel. Or I see one hand.
Hello all. I am Murali, associated with AT&T, working in talent acquisition team. So I have a couple of questions on talent acquisition. With the rapid technology development happening in the industry, be it AI, MI, or rapid RPA process, so how is this talent acquisition team will have the impact? Question number one, what is the impact of rapid technologies on the talent acquisition team? And the second question is, what is the talent acquisition team has to do to sustain and make the function better with this, impact of the technology?
You want to take it?
I'll take it. See, also you need to look at, sometime, for example, we are in a product company, not necessarily exactly the skills that we are looking at are available in the market, because the technologies and everything is constantly, evolving. So what we look at a partnership between talent acquisition team and a learning team is to look at a strategic hiring kind of a thing. I'll give you one practical example. We were looking for somebody with Java, UI, and a React Node.js kind of a profile. Now trying to find that niche kind of a skill, talent acquisition team will go into a spin and we'll probably, even if you are able to find, it will be at a very high cost and all those kind of stuff. So what we did was, talent acquisition team sitting with the learning team and saying, okay, let's get a Java person, and learning team will be able to invest in that Java person and get these skills, the additional skills that are required.
My question is little different. My question is, like, with the artificial intelligence impact on the TA talent acquisition team.
Yeah, I'll take it up. So if you want to see how AI and machine learning is changing talent acquisition as a profession, so you can see there are a lot of new startups who are trying to address. There's a company called Belong, Sequoia funded. They're trying to do something in figuring it out, that machine learning and social listening, they can try to find more details about candidate, rate them and present it to the employer. So that is on the industry as a whole. But you as a professional, if you want to really upgrade yourself, so of course you need to move beyond Naukri, right? 99% of recruiters, they go on Naukri, find the profile and call. That has moved away on finding candidates on social, and there are a lot of different innovation that has happened in that area. So with that, I think we are already out of time. Maybe you can take one more question if organizers are okay, or we are okay. Okay. So thank you everyone. It was a great panel, and thank you everyone for sharing your views in a candid manner.
Thanks.
Really enjoyed that. So,
Audio